Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Licensing and Regulatory Committee on Wednesday, the 26th of October. May I just remind you, first of all, that this has been live recorded. It's not been live screened, but it's been recorded, so be careful what you say. Could I have apologies for absence, please?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. None received. Minutes of the last meeting. Do you agree the minutes of the last meeting? Held on Wednesday the 15th of June. I know it's a long time ago. Sorry, Councillor Sessman?
Yes, it's missed me off, Chair. Hasn't got me in as being there. But seeing as I seconded a couple of proposals later on, I think that confirms I was actually here.
Okay, thank you for that. Otherwise, do you agree I sign these minutes as being correct? I'll do that at the end. Disclosures of members' interest.
Sorry, Chair, I think there's the subcommittee minutes as well from the 21st of July and the 5th of October.
For information.
They're not to sign, though, really. For information for the subcommittee minutes. Right, where are we? Yeah. Disclosure of members' interest. Again, we have no interest. And we carry on straight away with the report from the Head of Housing and Public Protection, Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licence Policy, Fire and Extinguisher First Aid Kits. Could I hand over to Tasman Noah?
Thank you, Chairman. As mentioned, this is a report in relation to Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Policy, specifically relating to fire extinguishers and first aid kits. The report is to update members and seek approval for consultation in respect of the removal of the requirement for Hackney Carriage and private hire vehicles to carry fire extinguishers and first aid kits. Members will note it is a condition of all licensed vehicles within Northumberland County Council to carry fire extinguishers and first aid kits. There is no requirement for them to actually be used. The report asks members to consider whether they wish to go out for consultation with the relevant bodies and stakeholders in respect of removing such conditions from all licences. The condition is attached to your report, and the recommendation is that we go out for a 12-week consultation which starts on the 1st of November. It's fairly straightforward, Chairman.
Right. Well, basically, the report's in front of you. It's more or less for information. This is just to inform you that it's going out to consultation. Do you all agree with that?
Recommendation, Chair. Chair, I'll second that, but just within the report, it says it's because nobody smokes. I can't believe for one moment, not for years and years and years, an operator could lose his licence because he didn't have a first aid kit when he had a smoker in his car. I think it doesn't quite balance with me, but I'd emphasise that point. Today, an operator would have his licence taken off him if he did not have either his first aid kit or his fire extinguisher in the car. So the right thing to do is to ask the trade. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I presume you've read the report, but it says that in the report that we're one of the only councils left in the area with this condition, you could say. So this is just to sort of get everything the same as everyone else. So it's there for consultation. Consultation begins 1st of November? Right. Thank you for that.
Do you want any debate, Chair? Because we'll have to vote.
Well, everyone was unanimous, were you?
No, I think it is.
No, Councillor Levy.
Sorry.
I just think it's a backward step to remove a fire extinguisher and a first aid kit from taxis. You know, there's so many vehicle fires and also accidents where first aid kits would be helpful, and also a fire extinguisher, especially when you're carrying members of the public. And I just can't see where this would be coming from and what benefit can be gained from it. especially when the fire extinguisher and the first aid kit don't cost a particularly large amount of money. It just seems a very odd thing to spend council time on.
Well, as I say, it's out for consultation, or going out for consultation. We'll see what the firm says, what the taxi drivers say and businesses say about it. I would imagine it'll save them money. I would imagine it'd be all for it, but this is the reason for consultation, basically.
I mean, the other point I would look at is, as the councillor said about smoking, but obviously the vape, smoking, electronic cigarettes are heating elements and potentially a fire risk as well. So that argument just wouldn't have any sway.
I couldn't really comment on that one. To me, this vaping is ridiculous anyway. You see people with the windows open, it's streaming out of them. So I wouldn't imagine taxi drivers, if they've got any sense, will allow them to vape in the car. Councillor Parry? Microphone?
I think what the report says is that we're not making it compulsory to use them or to retain them. They can keep them if they want. It's up to them.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, it's going out for consultation. So that's basically it.
Chair, we will need consultation.
I'm advised we need a vote, so can I have a show of hands, please, for...
Chair, I've still got my hand up, Chair.
Sorry?
I still have my hand up. For
The diet's working. Sorry, Councillor Sesford.
And I just wanted to check, because as far as I'm aware, this is just to note the contents and agree in consultation. I presume we're coming back later and having a debate on what comes back. But so, I mean, we all have opinions. I have opinion, and I don't disagree with some of the things that have been said here today. But
That'll happen.
we'll do that at the appropriate time.
That'll happen after the consultation. It'll come back to us then we'll debate it. Right, I've been said, told a show of hands. Could all those in favour of the recommendation show a hand? Against? Four, it's passed.
That's 7 for, 1 against.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Councillor Foster couldn't take part because she came.
No, you weren't in at the start. 7
Yeah.
and 1 against. Right, we'll head on now to Hackney Carriage and Private Hire licence fees.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as mentioned, this is a report of Hackney Carriage and Private Hire licensing fees. The report is to provide information to the committee in relation to the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire licensing fees. And the recommendation is members note the content of the report and members debate whether any changes to the current fees are required. As members will note from the report, the Council may recover the cost of granting of Hackney Carriage and Private Hire licence fees with a view to covering the costs that they cost the Council. In relation to vehicles, the costs may include enforcement. It does not apply to the driver's licence fees. Driver's licence fees were last amended in 2018, and Hackney Carriage and Private Hire vehicle fees and operator licences were last amended in 2015. A copy of the current fees is attached on page 18. Darren has very nimbly provided members with a sheet which contains the current fees charged by the Council for the various licence types, and we have worked out the cost of administrating the licence fee is in the second column. Members do not have to charge the full cost to the Council of those licences. However, they should not charge more than what it costs the Council to administer. In working out what the cost of administrating the licence fees has been, we have included elements such as staffing costs, printing costs, corporate recharges to a certain level, stationery costs, production of certain materials, etc. The committee report is for members to debate There are a couple of issues we would ask members to consider as well, whether you wish to increase the charge at all, whether you wish to increase it to the full amount of the cost of administrating the licence. One element of that would be members will note there are two separate charges. The top two rows are for vehicle licences. There is currently a reduction of a small amount, I think it's £12 currently, for private hire and hackney carriage vehicles, which are classed as greener fuel, so you're talking your electric vehicles. So we would ask members to debate whether you wish to continue that or whether have one fee or a variation of those options. Is there anything else? Just get my list. Members should note that the legal requirements for certain licence fees for vehicles and operators is that we have to consult on those fees. The legislation requires us to put a notice in the press requesting comments relating to them. This is done normally via the various publications within Northumberland. And then after the 28 days of the notice, if there are objections to it, it would then come back to committee. If there are no objections to any proposed fees, then it would just come into force. So it would be expected that if we got objections to any increase in the fees, that they would come to the December committee, which I think 20th of December. Don't know if you wish to debate them. There's a couple of issues we can pick up at the end.
Right. Councillor Sesford.
Yeah, I'll just ask a couple of questions, please, if I may. First of all, how often do these come up for review?
There's no set timescale. I think in the past few years, there's been no appetite to increase them. And we have done a lot of work to reduce costs, etc., in the processing of them. As I say, it's 2015 for licences, 2018 for other licences.
So that's the last time they were amended, but have they been up in front of council in the interim period?
No. However,
Never.
what I would say is that the ones that were agreed in 2018, the full cost recovery was not agreed. It was a proportion of that.
Well, in that case, I think it should be, especially in the times that we're in at the moment, that maybe we should not consider this particular year, maybe next year, maybe the year after, or something like that. But I would be quite personally very happy if they stayed exactly the same as they are at this particular time.
Right. Any more? Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I think you get to the stage, if you consider 7 years since there was an increase, and I don't need to tell people in here what sort of increases there's been in that 7-year period. What I can't tell you is what increases there'll be next year. What I would confidently say is there won't be a decrease. There will be a further increase. And where you get to is a stage where you suddenly hire a hump of a huge amount onto a trader that it becomes impossible for that trader to meet. Whereas doing it gradually helps everyone. And it's not unrealistic to expect that small increase. And to be fair, normally I'm the person that would argue against any increases. I really would. But seeing we've just saved them some money, or we could be saving them money on a fire extinguisher, and I can't remember the last time I ever opened a first aid box, but never mind. I don't think this is unrealistic. And I would like to say the costs here are really going on the operator and not the person behind the wheel. It's more, we have more drivers driving vehicles in Northumberland than operators with licenses, and it's the operator that will pick up the cost in the main, the company, rather than the individual. So that's what I'm basing my thoughts on, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. 2 points. obviously, what I'm concerned about is if the cost of administration, the licences, will effectively make a loss of, and we're not covering our costs. Obviously, I'm concerned about that. I haven't got a great lot of issue about a small increase. But what I'm wondering is, over the year, what kind of money are we talking about? Because I totally see where Councillor Cessford's coming from. And the second point is I can't just recall why we agreed a 10% reduction for the greener fuels policy. I was probably on licence because I've been around a long time, but I can't remember that being discussed. Was it discussed and agreed by the licence committee, or was it just a decision which was made by officers? Because obviously decisions of licence need to go to full council, but I can't remember the debate on greener fuels. But maybe I forgot because it's 4 or 5 years ago.
It seemingly was done at committee level, from what I gather, yeah. I think you're getting a little bit confused with fuel prices and things, and the actual licence fees. Councillor Hardy.
Yes, my concern is very similar. I can't accept that we as an administration subsidise an administrative cost to the advantage of an operator. And I think that it's time that it was brought in line with the administrative costs.
Right. Any more? Councillor Wallace.
Chair, Councillor Hardy's just given me a thought there. In the hard to reach areas where there's no public transport, we should be going out our way to help operators to give our residents accessibility to what we in urban areas expect to be the norm. So perhaps there is an actual opportunity somewhere along the line where we should be asking for subsidies towards operators' licence in the hinter regions, but that's not on the agenda for today.
Very true. And it isn't just the north, there's the west and the rest of rural Northumberland. If you bear in mind, at the last committee meeting we had, when we did alter the fees, the tariffs, that we said we would look at the tariffs again in March in this next year. So that's bear in mind, that's on the cards. Councillor Parry.
Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Chair. You've got the prices down as individual licensing, and it would have been nice to see a total number of taxis and the cost to the authority of the possible ways that we're going in respect of especially the first two lines there, the Hackney Carriage and the greener fuels. I thought this council were and taking on board the points from my colleagues, but we're trying to drive and support the greener fuels, the electric cars and everything else that we can do. And there's not much difference in the price. It's not going to be life-changing, but if we start looking at numbers, it could be. And if we are saving money, or if we're saving them money, it's costing us money, you know, what else could have been done with that money? Thanks, Chair.
Right.
Just in respect of that, I have got some figures of the number of electric vehicles we currently have licensed with ourselves. We currently have 335 Hackney carriages, of which 21 of them are electric. We have 486 private hire vehicles, of which 61 are electric. I think there was an aim in the beginning to encourage greener fuels, etc. I'm not sure that the amount given is enough to encourage someone to change their vehicle to an electric. Just on the small amount we would reduce the licence fee by.
Sorry, Chair, just to come back on that, that's my point. We're trying to drive forward with electric cars, greener vehicles, and you know, is that enough reward, dare I say, to move on to you know, different vehicles. So
That's up for debate. It's up to you. Councillor Swinbank.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. First was a question about greener fuels. What does greener fuels constitute? You must have a list.
To be honest, at the moment, it's mainly electric, but it was classed as greener fuels in the very beginning because there was a lot of different types. There was LPG conversions and that kind of thing, so it's anything other than your standard. It does cover those that are petrol and electric. It's not just electric. So if it can use electric and petrol, it would still class as a greener vehicle.
Okay, so it covers hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and
Yes.
full battery electric.
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned in your introduction there about you having managed to reduce the costs of some of the admin costs. Now, obviously, we're looking at figures here which were decided in 2015, am I right? Obviously, we've had quite a dose of inflation since 2015, and the cost that the cost of administering the licence in most cases hasn't really gone up very far, seemingly, from that point. Could you explain a bit more about how you've managed to bring down the costs of administering
the time taken to process the application is different to what it was when these were set. We've got different processes in place, the amount of enforcement and the percentage of enforcement that is done by our enforcement officers is less for taxis than a proportion of the licensing sections is as it was in 2015. They have got different additional, there's a better word for it, licenses to enforce as well. So that is probably the main thing, the amount of time on enforcement.
Thank you. Councillor Foster. Oh, back there.
Thank you, Chair. This is a difficult one because on the one hand you don't want the county council to be losing money because obviously that money could be used elsewhere where it's needed. But by the same token, we have the cost of living crisis. Everybody's struggling. So I kind of feel that they do need to maybe go up marginally, but not a great deal, because at the end of the day we need to think about the livelihood of the taxi drivers. Especially given that taxi fares have gone up, people have got less money to spend, so there's probably less people using taxis at the moment as well. And as for encouraging the greener fuels, in the case of hybrids and electric, I think we do have to have that incentive there without a doubt, because at the moment, you're talking an average of, £30,000 to £40,000 plus to buy a new electric car. They're not cheap. And the cost of electricity right now has gone through the roof. So if you're relying on the rapid chargers around the county, you are paying quite a lot of money for electricity to charge the vehicle. And there are debates going on at the moment as to whether it's cheaper to get diesel or petrol as opposed to charging up electric at these chargers. So it's a very difficult time to promote the electric vehicle. And I mean, I'm fully behind them. I've got one myself. I think they're fantastic. But the problem being the cost, if you haven't got a really good tariff at home where you can charge up, which, to be honest, when you're out and about taxiing people around, you don't have the luxury of going on to these cheaper tariffs at home because they take hours to charge the vehicle. It's not the same as a rapid that you have around the area. And those ones are the ones that are quite expensive. So I think whatever we do decide to do, we do need to incentivise the greener fuels because it is expensive to change to that at the moment. I do think we need to, absorb less of a loss because the cost in 2015 will be vastly different to what it is now because costs have gone up generally. But by the same token, I don't want to lumber too much onto the taxi trade either because everybody is struggling and they're not exempt to that problem. Thank you, Chair.
You're right. I think we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, basically. We're damned if we do and damned if we don't. But I think it should be reviewed anyway, to whichever way it goes. Is there any more debate on this? So, Councillor Swinburne?
Obviously, there's a cost of administering the licence is put down here. There's the current fee. What we haven't had is the total amount, the differences between the total. You must have that figure. As in, what the difference is between administrating on these two sets of values.
For the greener fuels?
No, overall. The cost to the council, keeping the fees as they are versus changing them to the right-hand column.
I do have... Sorry, switch off too quick. 2 minutes.
Are there any more questions while Tasman's looking for that? You've stopped things now, haven't you?
2 minutes.
Oh, Councillor Sesford?
Well, it's not so much a question. I mean, I said what I said at the beginning. I heard what Councillor Wallace said about if we don't do a small increase, we get a big boom the next time round. And it is a possibility, of course. But I suspect that you're always going to look at a minimal increase anyway. Whether in the fact that you haven't put it up the year before is you haven't put it up the year before. So that wouldn't affect me personally in that decision. So I just thought I'd make that point.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, with the Chair's consent, I'm just going to brief you on what you're considering here. Obviously, you've noted the content of the report because you're debating it now. So you've debated whether any changes are necessary to the current fees. In terms of what you need to decide today is, obviously, you've got your list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 different fees here. It may be useful to go through each one individually and decide whether there's any change in respect of them, or whether somebody wants to propose en masse that they all go to the new cost of administering the licence, or whether somebody wants to propose just keeping them the same. Because whatever you decide, whatever goes through as a motion today, that has to be consulted on. But if there's no representations at all, those will be brought into force. So they won't even come back to the next committee, they'll just be brought into force. It's only if there's responses to the consultation that it'll come back to the next committee.
Councillor Sesford?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would just like to make a proposal on this so we can get on with it, please. And that is, I would like to propose that there are no changes to the current fees, however, to include a timetable review in a year's time.
Does the committee want the estimated income increase? If you could, yeah. Yeah, if all of those were brought in, obviously we cannot predict who will apply and who won't apply, but it would be about £12,500.
So that's the overall additional cost to these,
Right. Councillor Wallace.
Sorry, I've got
Councillor Sesford, sorry.
He's proposed.
Is there a seconder for that? Could you repeat your proposal, please?
Sorry, I would have to switch that on. Yes, my proposal is that the fees remain the same, but we have a timetabled review in 1 year's time.
Is that seconded?
So that fails.
Right. Councillor Wallace first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My thoughts are very simple, and it was Tasman told at the beginning. The council's entitled to put in increases, but they're not entitled to put in any increases that give a profit. This is not a profit-making exercise. This is to cover costs. I think it's been demonstrated the length of time I've been on licensing, that licensing department do listen to taxi operators. There's consultations going back left, right and centre. The truth was known, there's probably too many consultations. And one of the criticisms I've heard from you, as well as others, Chair, is the lack of responses to the consultations. The only people often that seems to care is us. And that's the reality, because we're getting a cross-section of views here. You can argue about supporting the greener. I can remember when we give drivers a reduction in the licence fee because they took pensioners' tokens. I wonder how many people in here remember that. Yeah, it's a fact. Because the operator got the money, not the driver. The driver was getting less cash. So we took that into consideration. You know, we are very fair-minded, Chair. But we have to be realistic, very realistic. I don't think it'll drive anybody out of the trade. I don't think it'll bring anybody into the trade. The trade determines itself. If British Volt takes off with Camas, you'll see a huge influx in requirements for licences. If they don't take off, you may see reductions. Who knows? The reality is we've got to meet these costs. We all know, and this is not politics, there's approximately a £17 million black hole in this authority for the next year on revenues. We cannot be making decisions that cost this authority more money. With that in mind and with a heavy heart, I'll propose that we accept the tabled increases put in front of us today en masse. That's each and every one, without reading them out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, as listed. We accept each and every one of them and duly put into press and follow, as outlined in the report, the necessary steps that's needed to take. Thank you, Chair.
We can't do that today, but we can. It's got to go through consultation. Councillor Hardy and then Councillor Lee.
I would second proposal to increase in line with the administrative cost.
Councillor Lee.
I was just going to second it as well. So.
It's thirded. Councillor Gallagher.
Licence for this authority. How much has that gone up since the last time that was exercised?
Overall, I couldn't give you an answer. However, individual costs, staffing costs have gone up, although time taken to do certain things has gone down. The element of corporate recharges has gone up. Obviously, what things cost us. Stationery has gone up. All those elements that we take into account, the vast majority of them have gone up, other than officer time.
Councillor Swinbank.
Can I make a counter proposal?
No. Sorry. Not yet. Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Chair. I kind of want to do something very similar, but I would rather ask the proposer how we would feel about maybe changing that slightly to actually have that incentive in there for green fuels. Because if we move it en masse, 241, irrespective of the type of vehicle, we're not actually given any incentive to encourage electric vehicles. So it was just if the proposer would consider any amendment to that original to incorporate a discount for electric vehicles. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I'd prefer if the people selling cars give a bigger incentive. If you go outside and say, I've got a brand new car, let me just point this out. It's £240 a month cheaper than an electric version. Exactly the same car, £240 a month cheaper, and I would still have to pay a third in addition after 3 years of that electric vehicle. That's the reality of the costs, plus 1,500 quid to get a charger put on my wall in my house. There is no, traders are not going out there buying new cars. They're buying vehicles that will get them a job. That's the reality of the situation. And 20 odd quid means not, that sounds embarrassing to say it, but in the grand scheme of things, I hope they make an extra 20 quid every night, Chair, I really do. But I don't see any incentive at all. And there'll come a time, not too far away.
Can I remind you all that we're not trying to save money for taxi drivers or taxis. We're trying to save money for ourselves, for the council. And it's just to cover costs. It's not to make any profit. It's a non-profit making thing. This is what our idea is. So with that proposal and that seconder, can I have a show of hands?
Can I just say, Chair, obviously in respect to that proposal, it's to accept the new fees in respect of the cost of administering the licences, but that's obviously subject to the statutory consultation, of course, because we can't get around that. So if there's no objection, that will come into force. If there are representations, it'll be back before you in December to consider those representations and whether you still want to proceed with that.
We are also, just to say, for a consultation, it requires to go an advert in one local newspaper, only one. But we're going to explore 3 new local newspapers, and we'll also send out emails to those affected. Right, could I have a show of hands, please, on the proposal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against? Sorry, was that 8?
That was 8. 8 for.
8.
2 for.
Against? 1, 2.
No
Abstentions? None. Right, thank you.
So that was consultation.
Right, we head on now to street trading policy. Oh, sorry. Like that.
Sorry, Chairman. Yes.
So they need to vote on that as well.
Yeah, might as well.
Do you want to say this? Sorry, members, there's a second part to this in respect of you've already made your decision in respect of what you would like in terms of fees. But we also need a proposal to agree that the fees will come into force the day after the consultation period closes, if there's no objections, if there's no representations, and also to agree that the Director of Housing and Public Protection shall commence the consultation process at the earliest opportunity. So if somebody could propose that.
Formally proposed, Chair.
Councillor Foster just beat you by, yeah, and Councillor Wallace. Right, we'll carry on now.
We just need a vote on that.
Oh,
Okay, sorry.
show of hands, please. That's unanimous.
Yeah, that's unanimous.
Now we'll go on to street trading policy. Hopefully.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as members will be aware, the Council has a street trading policy, and again, this report is to request approval from the committee members to go out for consultation on the policy and whether any amendments are needed to that policy. Officers have highlighted there is a possible issue within the street trading policy in relation to daily consent applications, which are not included within either our fee scale or within our application process currently. And again, would ask the members to consider whether they wish to consult on whether a requirement for applicants to have a DBS application a DBS certificate with applications, those two issues are missing from the policy at the moment. Again, the street trading policy was last approved by the Council in 2015, and it's certainly time to review that policy. We would... Oh, sorry, I've missed one there, sorry. And there is a current list of exemptions within that policy, and whether those exemptions are still valid. Those that are exempt are also exempt from the application process and any fee element to that application. Officers have recommended that the policy should be out for consultation with a commencement date of the 1st of November for a period of 12 weeks, which is the standard consultation period. Don't think there's anything else I can add other than that, what's in the policy. The current exemptions to the policy are included within the report, and they include items such as fates, carnivals and similar community-based events, non-commercial or charitable events, farmers markets, community fairs and craft events, and events celebrating local anniversaries. Do you wish to debate?
Councillor Cesford had his hand up.
Basically, Chair, it's very much like the first one we had a look at. It's only asking us to agree a consultation. So I'm happy to move that, or propose it, or whatever you want us to do with it.
Can I have a second, please, Councillor Lee? Any debate on this? As I said, it's just for consultation, basically. And I presume you've all read the bump in the back.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of searching questions, and probably from my experience and probably county councillors around Northumberland, that the street trading policy is very loose. I think the enforcement around it needs to be reviewed, and prior to any event taking place, whether it's a town market, food market, a circus or whatever, as it enters our towns, we are inundated with posters, and everywhere it just seems to get plastered all over weeks beforehand. So these are the organisers that come into our communities. So there has to be some enforcement around that particular thing. When you challenge, for example, there's one, I think there's a circus or some fair happening down in Newbiggin by the sea. When you challenge and local councillors get concerned about the posters that are around, it gets bantered from pillar to post in Northumberland County Council. And then when you get back to the organisers say it's a third party that does this. So the reality is, I think the organisers should in theory take responsibility for the posters, and I think that has to be emphasised. The other thing is I don't think whether I've missed it or it's licensing, insurances. So you might have a small event. We have to make sure through enforcement that these places are fully insured, and I don't know how you do that. I don't know, if what department would go through there, but for clarity for everybody and every level, that has to be looked at. There's a thing in there about vehicles. We have to have, again with enforcement, we have vehicles that come into my town that park all over the place just because it's a market day. there has to have respect for our communities. And when these organisations come into your community, that we should designate areas for them to park, and they should adhere to that. They don't. So I know it's probably going off on a little bit of a tangent, but these things need to be addressed for the Northumberland wide. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. I think it's possibly a case of trading standards, maybe, or traffic wardens. I don't know, but it is a problem. You're right.
Sorry, there is a process in place in relation to events at the moment. It's called the Safety Advisory Group, but it's not compulsory. But it's not within the remit of the licensing, so I would not really want to give you any specifics about that because it's not within my remit. In relation to posters, etc., we can take that up, but that's not in relation to, unless it's a licensing event, it's not really within our remit, but we can certainly look into that. And I can't remember what your third one was. Oh, street trading. If we would, sorry, I'm just trying to word this. There are two types of street trading permit we can issue. One is a mobile, and that's in relation to issues such as ice cream vans who have an area, but they have to move within, I think it's off the top, within a set period. I think it's within 15 or 20 minutes have to move on. We don't stipulate where they have to stay, but we would stipulate anybody who's staying who has a static licence, even if they move that at the end of the day, if they're there more than half an hour, they need a static licence from ourselves, and we would stipulate where they have to put that vehicle. Usually, if it's on the highway, we would consult with the Highways Department in relation to any road safety issues. Don't know if that answers your question.
Chair, just to come back through yourself, posters around Northumberland County Council, I'll give you my experience of it, and it's not recently, so it's a few years back, that I was asked when I had concerns about posters going around Ashington, what size are they? If they're an A4, this department deals with it. If they're an A3 and up over, this department deals with it. Can we not just get a hold of this as one department and one bit of legislation that says, if we're being inundated by third parties putting leaflets all over the town, let's just deal with it. Thank you, Chair.
It's right, it depends on the size though, because size is everything. Under a certain size, it would be the planning department's remit. Otherwise, I presume it may be our remit.
In the first instance.
So try going to planning in the future. I don't know where you'll get with that, mind. Councillor Swinbank, did you have your hand up? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about DBS checks, really. Obviously, the pluses and minuses, it would be an extra cost on businesses. It's another kind of hoop to jump through, but obviously there's public safety issues with regard to it. I just wonder whether what other local authorities do generally on DBS and with regard to this area.
It's a bit of a mix and match. A lot of authorities don't do street trading at all. Licensing may not have had an issue with street trading, so they haven't brought it in. Some authorities do require the DBSs, but this authority does not. We just require a declaration.
Okay. Is there any more debate? Could I have a show of hands, please, for the proposal? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Right, the date and time of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 20th December 2022. I have no other urgent business, so thank you all very much for attending.